So, hello and welcome to awB Live, where we gather once a month to just really explore aging while Black through the many ways in which it shows up in America and around the world. As usual, I want to remind you that at Aging While Black, we envision a society where Black elders are celebrated, supported, and empowered to thrive in every aspect of life. And I am always excited to come into this space, but I am especially excited today because I'd like to welcome Miss Christina Peoples to awB Live. Welcome, Christina.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Happy to
I
be here.
I am so thrilled to explore this perspective with you, this ecosystem with you, and the really important ways in which you show up. And speaking of such, over the last few days, we have shared a bit about you across our platforms and the work that you do. How would you introduce yourself to the Aging While Black community?
I would say I am a energetic trailblazer who loves to laugh, talk about all things related to aging, which really touches every aspect of our lives. I often point that out. That the aging process influences our decisions, our thoughts, our self perceptions, and our lifestyles in ways that we might not even notice. So I educate people about topics related to aging with my full personality, holding nothing back because over the years I've learned to embrace this authenticity and I am passionate about working with older adults. I am a woman of God who continues to persevere, who is the queen of a good bounce back. And I created this brand from a simple shift in perspective. I want people to feel my passion and energy for what I do and be inspired and motivated to participate and learn and even share their knowledge. So that's how I would introduce myself to the beautiful Aging Wild Black community.
Well, and you have been seriously introduced to the community, and thank you for that. Uh, and certainly the energy and the authenticity that you seek to bring, you're successful
Thank you.
because it certainly comes across. Um, Was it and I gotta ask you, so what was it a process to become comfortable in just showing up in as your authentic self?
Yeah, it's an ongoing process.
Mm.
So definitely hasn't ended. There have been a number of times that I've been in my head like, is this too much? Do I need to pipe down a little bit? But more and more, I think just people who have come in contact with my content, they constantly affirm me and say like I love your energy and I like how you um share the information the way you do it, right? I can feel the enthusiasm. You make it fun, you make it relatable. And so, thankfully, to people who support me, and to those who I don't even know that just give me feedback, that has contributed. But it is an ongoing process for me to get out of my head and be like, just do you.
Mm.
Don't worry about the response or lack thereof, just continue to do you. And so every day I have to make that decision. And there's been times where I've had to take breaks to be able to get to that point. But all the while, it's been a learning process and it's been something that more and more I find myself just being more open and comfortable with who I am and my personality.
And that is great to hear. I was on a call yesterday with a guy, and he was talking about his experience in across social media platforms. And somebody asked him a question about going back to look at the performance of certain things he created, and he said, "I never do because when I created it, it was what I wanted to say."
Mm.
And I'm comfortable with that's what I wanted to say. And it really doesn't matter to me how people reacted to it, how many folks liked it, what comments came. I certainly want to honor people engagement around it, but I'm not going back to look and to evaluate what I said or how I expressed something at a particular point in time because I am intentional in the posting. So I said what I meant to say. Uh, and that was a refreshing perspective for me. Uh, I did want to touch on one other thing that you said, Christina, that was really of it caught my attention. Where you talked about just this ubiquitous nature of aging, this huge thing that is aging, that much of the world has put into this tiny little slice uh, of older adults.
Mhm.
But aging is a much greater reality than that. And the question that I'd ask is, how do your contemporaries and your peers and those who are of your generation uh, react to that assertion?
I love that question. There's mixed reviews, right? I think there are people who may not identify with getting older for various reasons, but much of it I think is related to ageism, which is like a form of discrimination or stereotypes towards people of a certain age group or an individual of a certain age, right? So I think there are some people who don't identify with it, don't want to think about it, and then there are people who are like, I never thought about that before, and now I'm thinking differently about things and trying to figure more out about my own aging experience. And then I have peers who are like, this is good. You know what? The other day I was just talking about how I've been feeling about getting older, and I've been pointing out different things about my life, right, that I want to address. So there's mixed reviews, but I welcome all of it. I don't,
Yeah,
one thing I don't want to do is, for those who may not identify with getting older, I never want to make them feel guilty or shame. I just want to share a different perspective in hopes that maybe there could be a shift in the way they see things, but never have the expectation that there will be. I just want people to have the knowledge, hear the different perspectives, and potentially figure out how all of that can be applied to their own aging experience.
thank you. And you got a double tap in the chat from
Okay.
Megan,
Hey,
who said
Megan.
Megan says it is new perspectives for sure. Uh, and I don't know why, but I just read that, and it seems like she was saying for sure with a little attitude to it also.
Okay.
So, Christina, what does the concept aging while black bring to mind for you?
It brings a lot of things to mind. I see aging while black, it's an opportunity that my ancestors prayed and worked hard for, but not all were afforded the chance to continue the journey in a way that felt uplifting or rich or powerful or even beautiful. So I see aging while black as a blessing, and one that I don't take lightly. It instills a sense of pride in me. Like, I'm proud to be aging while black, despite the many hurdles and obstacles that have made it challenging. The pride is real. So to me, aging while black is full of culture, and it's enriched with beautiful how I got over stories. I
Mm,
see Black people as just different. Our language, our physical features, our hair, our humor, our wisdom. Like, I really haven't seen anything like it, and that gives me pride. And seeing this on the spectrum from young to old is what makes aging while Black such a beautiful thing. And so often we hear all of these stories that are, a lot of times painted in a way that is dark and grim. And yes, that may be some of our truths, but there's so much more than that. And I believe that aging while Black captures everything. It's just dope, and it's just a beautiful thing. And again, I'm proud to be a Black woman who is aging every single day.
thank you, ma'am. So I need, and if I'm going to be appropriate here, I'm gonna need uh, you to talk to us about Gero what and real homies want to know.
You want the long story or the short story? No,
The good one.
I got you. So, okay, the story about Gero Wood. This was born in a time where I felt very inadequate. I had a lot of question marks on a lot of things because I was trying to get a job. And every way I turned, everybody was saying no. Or I was getting invited to, you know, second interviews, but then it would be like, yeah, we liked you, but yeah, we're going to go with another candidate. So it was in a time where I was just really down on myself, and I kept saying like, I just want to work with older people. That's all I want to do. And I promise you, one day it was just loud and clear in the midst of me just beating myself up and everything that I really heard God say, like, you can do that. Like, you can do all of that. You just might not get paid for it right now. So when I heard that, it was kind of like, I never thought of it like that. So at first, I had started a group at my church. It was called Seasoned Saints, and it was for people 50 plus. And we would do all these activities together. Like, we would just have a good time, right? And then it was like, okay, so I've got this going on. And in the meantime, in between time, I'm just gonna learn everything I can about aging. So I started Googling aging blogs. And one of the things that stood out was a lot of the authors of these blogs were white people. There was no perspective from a person of color, let alone like a Black person. And I was like, wait a minute, now we aging too. Like, we get older. Where is a voice that represents that part? And I was just like, you know what? I'ma start a blog. And I went back and forth on it, like, wait, now, Christina, writing is not your thing. Like, are you sure? But I typed something up. I let my mom read it, and she was like, oh, this is good. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And then I started thinking, like, well, what would I name this blog? Like, what would it be called? And immediately Gero Wood popped up because when I was an undergrad, which was at Winston-Salem State University, I majored in gerontology. And whenever I would be talking with just different people that I would meet, and they would ask, what's your major? And I'd say gerontology. That would be the response, like, what? What is that? And so I just thought it was perfect. And the goal was to share information related to aging with hopes that people would learn and figure out things that were necessary for their aging experiences. And that's where Real Homies Want to Know came from. And actually, side note, I'll be posting a Real Homies Want to Know video today. I took a little break, but that's coming back actually today. Um, Thank you. But that's where Real Homies Want to Know came from. And for a long period of time, I would just share just general information about aging. And then I would also have guests who would come on and share their area of expertise. So I've had someone come on to talk about estate planning, which is something not a lot of people talk about, especially in the Black community. I had someone come on to talk about life insurance, to talk about mental health. So there's been a number of other people that have come on. The Dementia Guru and I did one with reference to caregiving. So there's been a number of different topics that have been shared. So that's Gero. That's Real Homies Want to Know. I wanted to make sure it all had, culture showing up in there. So I always make sure that I'm gonna throw something in there related to R&B music that I love, or just more of my personality. So that's all of it in a nutshell.
Thank you. And which leads me, so you attempt to capture a a descriptor of all of that wonderful personality and thirst for culture and authenticity and just the realness that you've shown. And you describe yourself in some places as an advocate for age inclusion, educator, and disruptor of ageism. What does that mean for you?
Yep.
I mean, words matter. You are definitely intentional and thoughtful about your words. Why are those words significant for you in the important work you undertake?
Well, it goes back to like what I said earlier about this ongoing process, right, of being comfortable with who I am. And yeah, self definition is important in this aging experience. And those three descriptors I felt represented me the most in this space, right? I recognize that the value of older adults is meaningful. And I see the need to ensure that older people are included in all aspects of society. So I advocate for this, whether it's highlighting the importance of empowering older people to make choices, because a lot of times, when one thing that comes with getting older is people start to think now you're incapable of making your own decisions, right? So I advocate to ensure that older people can make their own choices about their lives. I advocate by including older people in conversations, making space for them to be heard. And it even shows up with me advocating, it shows up in just simply seeing gaps in certain areas where an older person is not being represented. So that could be in photos, in programs, right? Just certain spaces where there's a lack of representation of older people. So that's the piece about how I am an advocate for age inclusion. It's something I'm really passionate about. And as an educator, what I do on the regular is educate in my own way. I share the knowledge that I know about getting older, about gerontology. I share it from a personal perspective. I share it from stories of other older people, and then, simply reading a book. So I share all of that. And then disruptor of ageism. So ageism has an impact on everyone at some point in their lives, younger or older. And it is a barrier to aging the best that we can, because it shows up in how we see ourselves when we look in the mirror, when we think about the years that we've been on this earth, and the societal expectations that come about, where you need to be doing this by this age, and you should have accomplished this at this age. You should be married now. You should have kids, all of the things. I want to disrupt all of that because it is ages and it can have a negative impact on our health, and our self perception, and how we interact with other people. So, those descriptors of who I am are the things that I'm really passionate about.
And do very well, I might add.
Thank you.
So, what inspired this focus on intergenerational relationships? Uh, and how do you believe the world benefits from both younger and older adults? And
I
how do
was
you how do these relationships? How do older and younger adults benefit from these relationships also?
I would say that my family inspired inspired the interest. But when I was in grad school, we had to come up with like an idea, a business idea, and we had to have a plan and all of these things. And I looked at my family. That's probably the best place to start when it comes to looking at intergenerational relationships. So there's a mixture of older and younger people. And I looked at how we interact with each other, how we have fun with the mixture of personalities and ages, and I saw the benefits. So when I worked on this business plan, I thought about how in the workspace it's also very intergenerational, and how sometimes in the workspace those intergenerational connections can either be negative or positive, just depending on how people see, I guess, certain groups of people. But there's like a need there for mentorship and what I call like an even exchange, where a younger person is sharing their ideas, their experiences, and so is the older person, and they're able to collaborate because of how diverse their backgrounds are and their thoughts and the way they see the world. And so that's kind of where the interest came from, but the benefits are major. Just like I said, there's like this opportunity to share skills and learn, and understand people of different ages. But it also adds a sense of belonging, which can strengthen our communities. Everybody, whether we admit it or not, we want to belong, we want to feel included. And when we have these intergenerational relationships, that shows up where we're belonging and we're being included. And then it's just a way of dispelling myths and getting rid of the assumptions that we might hold, the different biases that we have about older people or younger people. There's just a lot of benefits, and I think the more we work as a unit, the more things that can be done, the more barriers we can break down for sure.
So that was really rich, Christina, as has all of this conversation been for me. But I just want to name just a major help that you just gave to me with this framing of an equal exchange. Uh, because so very often when we think of intergenerational relationships, there's of course this construct of the wise sage sitting on the hill speaking down to the young people these words of wisdom that will change your life, or from the other end of the perspective, I have all of these things you really need to know, old dude, and so I need to impart this to you. But the reality is both parts are really critical, and there is value in the wisdom of elders when it is uh, when it's rightly shared and distributed. Uh, but the energy, the ingenuity, the creativity that so often resides in the passion of younger people, I just think uh, there is benefit that inures in both directions, and that framing of an equal exchange was just really, really helpful for me. And so, thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
Uh,
thank you. I'm glad that that stood out to you. I think we overlook. I feel like it's simple things, but we often overlook it, right? Just we kind of get in our own way when it comes to making certain connections. But like you said, both parties have something to impart, and I think the more awareness we bring around that, we could really see a change and a difference in how we interact with each other for sure.
yeah, the irony is the challenges we face are impacting all of us.
Hmm.
And it would seem to me that we'd want to address them as collectively as we possibly could.
Yeah.
So how do you envision the future of Gero what, uh, particularly in terms of inclusivity and representation of diverse population?
So I see Gerald what just being an international thing, right? I feel like there is space and opportunity to grow as far as the different types of workshops that could be created, the different people that I'll be able to connect with, and who will also be able to share what it is that they know with people. But most importantly, like gerontology
Yes.
itself, I feel like um, more people will learn about it and understand its importance and the need for it. Like so often, a lot of people don't know what gerontology is, so therefore they don't see why it's necessary to know about it, and what does a gerontologist even do, right?
Yeah.
So my hope with all of this is that more people will understand, one, that the world is aging rapidly everywhere, and that they will see the need to, or the purpose that a gerontologist serves, which we know the aging process, right? So we know the myths about aging, but the reality of aging. So we have that knowledge and the perspectives that go along with it, but um, we also can get in the mix when it comes to how organizations serve older adults, how organizations include older adults in by sharing like what it is that is really needed versus assuming, and then also how organizations are serving employees, right, who are getting
Hey,
older. What is
yeah.
in place for them? So if you take me as an example, a younger person in the workplace, but who will continue to get older, what is in place that's going to help me? But what's also in place for someone who may be 60 years old working? What is being done to ensure that your employees feel valued and don't feel excluded, or don't feel like I'm not getting this promotion because of my age, or you're not hiring me because of my age? So I feel like uh for me as Gero what, and then also for gerontologists all over, there's a space that we can jump into to provide consulting, to be able to um, map out strategies for organizations to kind of apply within and also outside.
Thank you. And Stephen dropped in the chat that unfortunately the myths we know are treated like truths when it comes to aging. And Megan, important point that we all are aging, and so it's wild, and much of what we see in terms of the reaction. You talk about the importance of gerontology, uh,
Mhm.
and in the conversations that I have with people, and I try not to ground the conversation in statistics, but there are some that are of interest. And the one that I notice causes people's eyebrows to raise a bit is that reality that in 2034 or 2035, depending upon which report you read, for the first time in America's history, there will be more people over the age of 65 than under the age of 18.
Mhm.
And that trend has already started happening. I mean, we are, it's not like in 2034, the seesaw is going to flip in the other way all of a sudden. These are trends that have already begun. And so I think the point that you stress is the need for understanding what that means for communities, for organizations, for systems, for aging services,
Mhm.
for education, for families, is really, really critical to our ability to thrive as a country and to thrive as a people.
Mhm.
And so, to borrow from your earlier comment, that was dope, Christina. Ah.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's true. And in addition to that, like I'm hopeful that there will be more leaders of color showing up in the field of aging and also advocating. Because a lot of times you really, when it's your culture, you feel as though you have more of an understanding that than what someone who may be of a different culture has, right? And so that representation and that understanding is necessary. And I have seen where there are certain organizations that are already taking notice to that and making strides to address that area, as far as creating platforms for leaders of color, but also recruiting more leaders of color because they see the need of diversity and equity and inclusion within their organization. And so I'm hopeful that we'll see an increase in that because representation matters. I've seen research that talks about how a black person who goes to a non-black doctor feels, but
Mhm.
in comparison to how they might feel when they're interacting with a black doctor, there's just different comfort levels. It's just the way the brain is, right? But we need more leaders that are representative of that because their knowledge and expertise is going to reach people who may otherwise have never heard any of the information being shared. So I'm just hopeful that we'll see an increase in that as well.
Yeah, it is important. You mentioned the importance of advocacy, and you and I have had a couple of informal conversations where I mentioned to you that I kind of lost my bearings a bit and started writing a book. Uh, but one of the things that I am led to share is this belief that I think we're at a place where the shift needs to be from advocacy to activism. And I talk a bit more about how I understand those distinctions to be, uh, because it is really pressing, and it is something that is extremely relevant, real, and pressing upon us. And we need to make certain that our culture thrives,
Mhm.
which leads me to the next question I wanted to explore with you, which is what do you believe is necessary to ensure that the realities of Black elders is acknowledged and addressed in the aging ecosystem in America?
Really, it goes with what you just said, right? The shift in how these issues are addressed. I like how you worded it, the shift from advocacy to activism, because we can point out what's wrong all day long, but then it just stays there. There needs to be action that comes with that. And then, in addition to that, I feel like this whole thing of like being a hero and trying to save people needs to go away. That's more of a barrier
Yes.
than something that can be helpful, because then when it's in the mindset of I have to save these people and I've got to help them, when it's in that mindset, we're not really listening anymore. We're just assuming what the need is because of our own biases and thoughts, right? About specifically Black elders. And so taking the time to engage in conversations with other people and really listen to what their needs are, I believe is going to help with addressing um, the aging ecosystem in America as it relates to Black elders. We just have to really get rid of the assumptions. And listen, I got my own assumptions as well, right? But it's just important that we step outside of that and not try to box um people in to these different thoughts and ideas, stepping outside of that and really taking the time to hear from them. I participated in it was the ASA Rise Fellows with the American Society on Aging. So I was part of the second cohort, the Disruptors, and there was a heavy focus on all of that, a heavy focus on seeing, engaging, and then acting. And that acting is the most important part, like you've already mentioned. Do more acting than just talking about issues and what needs to be done.
Yeah, and so a couple of things, and then we'll begin to wrap up. But this notion of assumptions
Mm-hmm.
and biases and the realities that we all have them is so really important. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that has been most impactful for me in this aging while Black experience uh, is the reality. We talk, our first pillar at Aging While Black is recalibrate the village.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing that has become crystal clear to me is that the village is a really diverse place. And if you show up thinking that whatever your intervention or solution is designed for Black people, and you aren't aware that that also means people who may not have are not of American soil descent, but who identify as Black.
Mm-hmm.
It means people who are living with HIV and are long-term survivors. I had a conversation yesterday with a brilliant woman who is biracial,
Mm-hmm.
but who grew up at varying times in a white culture and who identifies as Black. Uh, the village is not a monolith. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so it is really important that these perceptions are challenged if we're going to make certain that what's really happening in America for Black elders is really clearly seen, understood, and addressed. Uh, and so, as we prepare to wrap up, I want to bestow upon you something that I have the opportunity to do monthly. I want to give you temporarily the the awB magic wand.
Mm.
What are you going to transform about aging in America and why as you wave your wand, Christina Peoples?
I would say systems that honor the dignity and resilience of Black elders. And most importantly, just across the life course. Like all of the things we experience in childhood, positive or negative, follow us into adulthood and then into elderhood. And these systems don't just pop up in our 60s as Black people. We feel them at a higher level of intensity in our 60s, but from childhood on, like all of the things that are in place that really interfere with being able to age the best way that we can for our own personal aging experiences come from systems that dishonor or do not see us as human or do not see us as people who matter. So if I had that wand, I'd be like, ding, 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 let me clear this out, go, bye, poof, be gone right now. So that everyone like could really have a chance at this. It's just so many times like these opportunities are snatched away before we can even reach it to see that it was available, or we get into something that could be positive and then it's instantly taken away for various reasons, but a lot of times it's all based on these different isms. And so just
Yeah,
clearing all of that out so people could really have a chance at this. And then if they chose not to go that route that would be best for them, it's on them. That's what I would want to do. That's what I would
yeah.
want to transform.
Thank you. So Diana dropped in the chat, what are your suggestions for Black elders becoming part of these larger discussions? Uh, I agree that it's important for us to be at the table when programs are being designed. Any
Yeah.
thoughts for you there?
Yeah, so another thing that I did as part, or we all did as part of the ASA Rise Fellowship was we created a guide for agencies and just other organizations that they could use in a way of making sure that diverse elders and also which includes Black elders would be included. So that involved holding town hall meetings and making sure that everybody knew about it and was invited and had a chance to participate in the conversations. This can be done at your, faith-based organizations. This can be done at community recreation centers. I mean, there's so many different avenues that could be taken to ensure that Black elders are included in the conversations. We just need these places to be willing to open the space up, and also be able to provide the different strategies that can help with the conversations that can come along with it.
Yeah, and the other side of that very important coin that you just described, Christina, is making certain that there are Black elders who feel confident and are equipped to walk into these spaces and advance their agenda in their own sense of agency and sense of self and purpose. And that's part of what we are attempting to do with Aging While Black. I had a wonderful moment. I was in Detroit last week, and I got to sit in a room for almost 2 hours with about 35 unbelievable Black elders, talking to them and listening to them and helping to hopefully position them to become their own agents, to become
Mhm.
their own voices, to elevate their own voices in very strategic and intentional ways. So it's both sides of those coins. It's challenging the systems and structures, providing them with strategies so that those who are willing will provide them, but also making certain that we have a rich reservoir of Black elders who are ready to show up and speak to their own experiences and their own hopes and aspirations.
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
fully agree with that for sure. That's a great point.
yeah. And so, last to wrap us up, at Aging While Black, speaking to this last part of the conversation, we exist to transform the aging landscape by cultivating a vibrant network of partners, innovations, and opportunities that centers Black elders. Christina Peoples, what is your best hope for Aging While Black as a movement?
Honestly, that it continues to grow, that you all reach more people from everywhere. That I don't know if this is the hope that you all have, but this is my hope for Asian Black, that you all become international. It's Black elders everywhere, and I believe that it is possible. I believe that the work you all are doing is meaningful and it's needed, and that you all are going to continue to grow, reaching new heights. You're going to continue to really reach more Black elders and share those stories. You're going to continue to meet, right, and come together to strategize and continue to see the different gaps in various areas and figure out how to fill those gaps. So my biggest hope is that you all continue and know that you've got the support of Gero What and all of my homies that come along. You've got our support in all of that. I really appreciate this platform and the Aging Wild Black team, and I heard so many great things. I didn't get to attend the Black Summit. Um, at the American Society on Aging conference, but I heard so much great feedback about just everything that was involved in that summit. And I'm hopeful that that's also going to continue. Again, it's something that we need. It's a space that was needed, and I think that other people will be like, "Wow, so that's really a thing, huh? Okay, so what? Tell me about it. How can we get involved? How can we, amplify this platform?" So that's my hope.
And thank you for that. And we will be having another Black Aging Summit at On Aging 2025. And once we get through with this conversation, we can have another one about how Gero What shows up in the Aging While Black Learning Center and at the next Black Aging Summit.
Sounds
Chris,
like a plan to me.
Christina Peoples, this has been so rich. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy, for your creativity, your authenticity. Thank you for being you. Uh, and thank all the people around you who help shape you to be the you that you are.
Thank you.
Thanks for making time to share with us. And we look forward to sharing with you again soon. And to all of our friends, uh, follow us on the YouTube channel. Click on agingwhileblack.co. Sign up, connect with us, join with us as we lift up this movement that centers Black elders thriving in every aspect of life. We'll see you here next month. Thanks.